Angriest email I ever wrote to any manager. This was almost 15 years when I worked for a Fortune 500 company I will call conglomerate. I had been selected, go me, to support our division's biggest and most complex client. Our division was split into two halves. My division, which I'll call Boons, was by far the bigger and more complex side. Within it I supported 15 or so products. The smaller side, which I'll call Doggle, had about 4 to 5 products. Both divisions appeared to an outside observer to be remarkably similar. End users got them mixed up all the time. So did our clients. It was like filing a lawsuit in federal or state court. It may look the same, and it often is the same, but there are lots of things that will trip you up if you're not familiar with them. I was very experienced in Boons. In some cases I was our local expert. By sheer necessity I also understand a fair amount of the Doggle's environment, legalities, terms, processes, etc., but I had zero understanding of their applications. I had never used them or even seen them. I had approached my manager about cross-training, but it was something we never got around to. I had plenty to keep me busy, and besides I never interacted with the Doggle's clients anyway, at least not in terms of their products. Clients knew to approach the appropriate representatives most of the time, and would typically understand if they were gently redirected. Then I got the big new client. By chance their enrollment with us happened at roughly the same time that Conglomerate rolled out this new idea that we would all work together. We would work as one seamless entity. Every division, and every group within the same division too. I will go to my grave not understanding this edict. It was employed relentlessly in our marketing materials and in our internal cheerleading. For years. Aside from that, nothing else was ever done. At least not at a level where I could see it. It was like a coach showing up before each game to make a passionate speech about trying harder, and then leaving immediately to cruise the streets with the top down. So we all kept on as before, sometimes working well together congenially, sometimes not. I once had a division tell our mutual client that an issue wasn't their problem, and they should call Conglomerate. No, you are Conglomerate. I don't care that Conglomerate bought your company just a scant 3 years ago. You are now Conglomerate, just like me. Let's not PSS in each other's faces please, at least not in front of the client. But big new client took this to heart. This you can contact any of us about any issue at any time made a big impression on them. It's one of the reasons why they picked Conglomerate as a provider. So they started contacting me about anything. And I mean, anything. I once chased an opaque line item on one of their invoices for weeks. Since their time zone was about 3 to 5 hours behind mine, depending upon the office, I would often come to my desk to find a bunch of new tickets waiting for me, filled with head scratchers and wild goose chases. Normally this contacting me about stuff I knew nothing about was a minor nuisance. I grew comfortable flipping them over to the right person. They also learned pretty quickly that it was all a myth, which infuriated them, but they had already signed the contracts and migrated all the infrastructure, so what could they do? So the pile waiting for me shrunk over time. Except for one particular issue. Since they thought of our division as one big product suite, why shouldn't I help them with Doggle's products? It's the same thing, isn't it? This caused a lot of problems since Doggle questions could be time sensitive, where they needed to make decisions that day, so they wanted a response same day. Since they were hours behind me, they didn't get to their desks often until it was around noon my time. The Doggle staff was on the East Coast, hours ahead of me. And they normally left the office a little before 5 p.m. their time. This left me about a 1 to 3 hour window to call Doggle and get them on the phone so they could provide the expertise the client needed. If they called after 5 p.m. Eastern, I would have to go through the on-call sheet for Doggle. Going through this exercise was maddening. Their representatives would routinely not answer the on-call phone, tell me that I should help the client, refer me to other coworkers, say they don't have their laptop, say they've only been on the desk for a few months and don't feel like they can help, etc., etc., etc. Any and every excuse you can possibly think of I heard. It often took 3 to 4 hours for me to find someone who was willing to help them. This was particularly frustrating when our operations center would call my on-call phone, just so I could contact Doggle's on-call staff to help the client. That at times would mean I was playing phone tag for hours, from my house, in between trying to look after my kids. There was one person who would actually respond if she was on call, who I will call Tanisha. She too had kids and often took these calls while trying to juggle family life and helping big client. Often she ended up being the person who was finally tapped to help even when she was not listed as the on-call resource. This situation went on for almost a year while I routinely whined to my manager, occasionally commiserated with Tanisha, and also tried to speak with Doggle's support manager. It only took that long for me to realize why the client kept calling me. It was simple. I was answering my phone. Except for Tanisha, no one else was. It was that simple. That was the reason. That epiphany prompted me to send the angriest email I ever sent to any boss. Particularly one I otherwise liked and respected. It began with 72-point font in red capital letters saying, "Can we talk about this, please? Do I have your attention?" I said, "Do I have your attention?" And then a long stream of consciousness ran about how Doggle sucks. The manager of their staff should be fired. Tanisha is the only one they're worth anything. They should double her pay and fire everyone else. There are no repercussions for Doggle staff blowing off me. Blowing off our client. Why the hell is operations calling me and not Doggle regarding Doggle products? Which can only truly be supported by Doggle staff. Can you riddle me that? Can you? The email to my manager got a one-sentence response. He would look into it. Shortly thereafter the responsiveness from Doggle support improved. However, karma also struck in that Tanisha quit. She told me the main reason was because it seemed like she was doing all the work for their team. Which she was. Which pushed her to find a better job. So, believe it or not, big client once again went back to reaching out to me, and telling operations to reach out to me, because the Doggle on-call staff were worthless. Couldn't they talk to Tanisha? No, you can't. So Conglomerate hired someone new, in my time zone, specifically to help support clients further west. Someone who sat next to me at work, knew his stuff, and had a decent work ethic. Yahoo! After that, they stopped calling me. So my manager eventually came through. I had come to respect him and I'm certain he was spitting fire just like I was, behind the scenes though. On the other hand, shortly after all this happened, the manager of Doggle support was promoted. There is no justice. Story 2. You mean it works outside my house? I used to live downstairs from an older fella who I'll call Mr. Jones, who was reasonably tech savvy, but definitely in the category of knows enough to cause himself a lot of problems. When I moved into the flat I didn't have an internet connection, so I was tethering from my phone. When I was setting up the connection I did a Wi-Fi scan to see what was broadcasting in the area and to see if there were any phone hotspots, cheaper at the time than cellular data, and I found an unsecured internet connection called Jones-Belkin router. This was well into the late 2000s when even ISP-provided routers were configured with at least WEP. I was able to connect to the network and see that he had a PC and a laptop with shared folders wide open on each, and a printer. There was basically no security on this network, even the router password was just the default. I disconnected, connected to my phone to check my emails and then logged off. About a week later I was getting home from work, unlocking the front door and I met Mr. Jones for the first time as he came out of his front door. He introduced himself, I introduced myself and we had the usual new neighbor chat. I remembered the unsecured network and decided to ask him about it. Sorry, I have to ask, is the Jones-Belkin router network yours? Only it's completely insecure. Mr. Jones, oh, yes, that is mine, but how did you know about it? Well, it's broadcasting its network name, and my laptop picked it up. It's wide open for anyone to connect to. Mr. Jones, but it's in my flat? How does it get into your flat? I guess it can get through the walls? I can help you secure it if you like? That began an arrangement with Mr. Jones where I'd occasionally help him out with his computers. Job number 1 was to encrypt the Wi-Fi network, and tighten up his network settings on his computers. Within a couple of hours I had everything as secure as a home network needed to be. Over the couple of years that I lived there I helped him out a few more times with bits and pieces, including a borked Windows 7 upgrade and the occasional unpicking of cluster CKS of his own making. He always paid me for my time, and he'd occasionally bring down the odd bottle of wine or some beers.